How's it going, everybody? My name's Clark, also known as the Sober Webb. I was actually inspired by something I was reading this week that actually really reminded me of my own story that I'll get to in a second. And if you're able to close your eyes, especially if you're driving, please don't close your eyes. But if you're able to, I want you to close your eyes. And I'm not going to tell you where this is from, what book it's from, but it spoke to me. And then I'm going to tell you why it spoke to me. So close your eyes and listen to what I'm about to read you. Because it says, there are many conflicting feelings and ideas within us, and it is important for us to look deeply and know what is going on. When there are wars within us, it will not be long before we are at war with others, even those that we love. The violence, hatred, discrimination, and fear in society water the seeds of the violence, hatred, discrimination, and fear in us. If we go back to ourselves and touch our feelings, we will see the ways that we furnish fuel for the wars going on inside us. If we can learn ways to touch the peace, joy, and happiness that are already there, we will become healthy and strong and a resource for others. But the reason that spoke to me in terms of sharing that with you all tonight is because 7 years ago, I was at war with myself. And 7 years ago, I didn't know it at the time, but I was starting a journey to better understand myself, to find peace within myself so I could somehow help other people, even though 7 years ago, I didn't know I wanted to help other people. And what happened was this. I woke up on October 1st, 2017, and I knew two things were very likely. I was either going to die and leave my son without a father, or I was going to do something about my alcoholism, because that was slowly killing me. And the reason I had that realization on October 1st, 2017, which is the day that I stopped drinking for good, is because a few days later, my final battle with the war in myself took place. And that war, honestly, kind of almost turned out pretty nasty. So I was in Iceland on business. I was in Reykjavik. I was all by myself. I was 3 months sober after battling alcoholism for about 13 years. And I'm sitting in a restaurant. No one knows me. I'm all alone in a country where no one knows me, which is pretty much the ideal situation for anyone who maybe is battling addiction. Because if you're anonymous and ambiguous, it's easy just to kind of disappear and give into the thirst, as I called it. But I'm sitting there in this restaurant at my hotel, and I get to bill everything to my client who's not there. I'm by myself in a restaurant, and I'm looking at this burger. It's a Wagyu beef burger, and it's some like truffle fries. And I'm about to dig in because I'm salivating, but I realize I'm actually salivating not for the food, but I'm salivating for a beer because I'm in Iceland, and Icelandic beer sounds really nice. What goes better with a burger and fries? But a beer. But I know, being 3 months sober, my second attempt at getting sober for good that year, I know that I should not drink because I've come to terms with the fact that I have a problem. I'm an alcoholic and I shouldn't drink. But that's the duality of addiction, good and bad. You have the demon on one shoulder, you've got the angel on the other. One's telling you to do it, the other one's telling you not to do it. And unfortunately, in that instance, I was in a subconscious self-sabotage mode because honestly, back home, I had a failing marriage and I was scared and I didn't know how to get out of it. So I figured if I just self-sabotaged, someone else would have to make the decision. So I drank. I broke my sobriety of 3 months. I drank, but I stopped after 2 beers. And I went to bed that night. And I remember feeling really proud of myself. Like I have control. Like I don't have a problem. I can stop once I start. And that's the insidious part of alcoholism or addiction, is that you trick yourself into believing that you can control it. And before I tell you what happens next, I just want to explain to people really quickly what addiction's kind of like, because I know there's probably a lot of people that don't struggle with alcohol or don't struggle with drugs or don't struggle with something that they can't stop once they start. But that's what addiction is. And I like to tell people, it's like poison ivy. Like we all can kind of probably relate to poison ivy, whether we've had it or not. If you scratch it, it gets worse. And we know we shouldn't scratch it, but it itches so much, we scratch it and we scratch it and it gets out of control. It can even get to the point where we have to see a doctor and we have to get medication. But the beautiful thing about poison ivy is that if you don't scratch it, it will go away. And the same thing applies to addiction and to alcoholism, but it's just obviously really hard to get there. So back to my story, the next morning I wake up and I have scratched the poison ivy that is my addiction, and it takes over my conscious, my subconscious, my spirit all day. All I can think about is having another drink. And so I imbibe during lunch with a little bit of wine, but again, I stop and I'm in control. And then that night, we go out to a bar that's got like this big stone wall. It's Iceland. Let me tell you, it's a land of lava and ice. It's a bar. It's got a stone wall and there's like a brass spout coming out of the wall. And I find out there's Manhattans being poured on draft out of the wall. And whiskey was always my nemesis. And I knew I shouldn't have a Manhattan, but my friend was having one. So I had a sip and I said, I probably shouldn't have one. But there's those famous last words, I probably shouldn't have one, but I did. And that's it. I wake up the next morning in my hotel bed and I have no idea how I got there. And come to find out, if it wasn't for a very compassionate colleague of mine, I would have passed out blackout drunk on the streets of Reykjavik. So it wasn't the first time in my life where I actually was found asleep on the streets of a city and helped to my bed. So the only thing that I can do is feel guilt and shame. It's the instant go-to when you know that you've screwed up and you gave in and you're weak and you're diseased and you have a problem and you're never going to get any help and no one's ever going to understand. And so I take that guilt and shame. I take that disease mentality. I take that hopelessness that this is the rest of my life all the way back to the States. And I ease myself through the hangover with some nips on the plane. And I get back to Terminal E in Boston, which is the terminal where international flights come in. And who's waiting to meet me is my little boy, who's 2 at the time. And he runs up to me. He's so happy to see me. And I'm so happy to see him. And I pick him up and I hug him. And it's just, he's just obviously my everything. But all I can think about is alcohol because I'm in the throes of the end of the war with alcoholism. And that's when it gets really, really bad. And so all I can think about is alcohol. And so later that night, I have a 5th of vodka. And that's the beginning of a couple days of binging that leave me on the floor October 1st, 2017, where I knew I was going to die or I was going to live. And it was later that day that I was watching my son run around play and he was laughing and giggling and I just didn't know what to do. I was deep in the hopelessness and despair. That's a rock bottom where you just don't know how you're going to get out. And I heard finally a new voice, not the voice of you don't have a problem, not the voice of, you can control it, but a new voice that just said, you are meant to be more. And that's just said, you are meant to be more. And even though I had no idea what that meant, and I had no idea who I was supposed to become, that was the only thing that I needed in that moment. It was that sliver of hope and pure hopelessness that allowed me to commit to never drinking alcohol again. And not just that, but to not letting my life be defined by my struggles with alcohol or my past or my mistakes or the fact that I picked my son up and all I could think about was alcohol. I was not going to be defined by that. And now I'm almost 8 years sober. That was, like I said, that was the beginning of my journey to find peace within myself, to understand myself. And now I've built a community and a brand called the Sober Webb. I go by the Sober Webb, but it's also more obviously than just me. It's a community of a place where people can know that they're not alone and that they don't have to be defined by their past and that they don't have to label themselves anything if they don't want to for the rest of their life. And I'm writing a book around all of it. So if any of this speaks to you, I hope that you'll find me on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube and just join the community. That way, when the book is published, I can send you a copy. But most importantly, I just want everyone to know who's listening, whether you struggle with drugs or alcohol or whatever your addiction is, because we all have addictions. We all have something that we use to cope or to numb out or to check out on life. Whatever that problem is, you are not defined by it. You are not the results of yesterday. You're not the labels that people want to tell you that you are. You are not your guilt and shame. There is hope. Even in the hopelessness, there is hope. I like to say that I'm proof of it, but I know there's so many more people that have proven what is possible in the face of addiction and afterwards. So keep going. You get to create the life that you want. And I know that one day you too can stand up and say that I am meant to be more, and I will be more.